Right, so this is for our fall 2016 typography class, Project 5. I'm going to be showing quite a few InDesign techniques. One of the first things I'm going to do is talk about how to kill widows and orphans. It sounds horrible to say that, but that is a true phrase, killing widows and orphans. So this line right here is a widow. It's called widowed text. When you have an excessively short line at the end of a paragraph, that is known as widowed text. How do you kill widows? Well, we learned in a previous lesson that we can adjust our letter spacing and word spacing. Now, I'm only going to do it on this paragraph. I would not do this through editing a paragraph style. We talked about paragraph styles in another lesson as well. The reason why is I don't want every paragraph that's in this style to be modified. I just need this paragraph modified. So let's kill this widow, which is the word manuscripts. So there are two ways to approach this through our use of justification. So I'm in the flyout menu. First I have the paragraph selected. I have it doesn't matter if you have A or P selected for the character or paragraph formatting, but the flyout menu in the far right corner, you want to choose justification. We did this when we played around with a free font in one of our lessons. Now, I typically, when I have the justification on or up, I will turn the preview on. Now, my text is flush left, ragged right, and this has justification. So normally we change these for when we have really bad word spacing in a justified copy. But we also go here to kill widows. Now, I can either have manuscripts wrap up into the previous line in this paragraph, or I can have more words come down. So I usually start out with less is more. So I'm going to, and I may have to go with more is more, but I'm going to start working with my word spacing. Word spacing is a space between words, and I'm going to take it down just 10%. So 10% from 80 would be 70, 10% from 100 would be 90, and 10% from 133 would be 113, or I'll just go 110 to make it round. Now that really didn't do anything to get that manuscript to be popped up there. The next thing I might do is adjust my letter spacing. I might put it at -5% across the board. Ah, it just moved up. Yay! And I didn't do anything too extreme. I took 10% space out of the word spacing, and I took 5% space out of the letter spacing. What happens is when you use only small increments like 10 or 5%, it usually does not make these things look really super crowded. They still look beautifully letter spaced and word spaced. Only somebody with a really serious keen eye for typography might notice that. Most people would not. In fact, 99.9% of the people would not notice that I did that. Okay, so that was killing a widow by using less than normal word spacing and less than normal letter spacing. Now, you could do the opposite of this. You could, if you wanted to, you could make this have more words on that last line. I'm going to go back to justification. I'm going to put these back to what they were before, which was 80, 100, and 133, and then 0, 0, and 0. Whoops, excuse me. I have to go from the right to the left here. Gives me a message. So this is the normal word spacing and letter spacing. Now I could add 10% to the word spacing for the minimum desired or maximum. So I would have 90, 110, and 143. Okay, took care of the problem. I'm done. I don't have to worry about letter spacing. Okay, if I play with word spacing, it does it. I'm like, okay, that's great. Now I have killed the widow and left it with that extra line at the bottom. So I didn't take any lines out. Either way is appropriate, just depends on how much space you want. Okay, I like space. I like a little less. I like more space for graphics, a little less space for body copy. So I probably would have used the other one, which was taking one more line out instead of adding or keeping that line. So I'm going to go back to the thing I had before. I like to have more space open for graphics than less.
Why did you pick
because I figured if I try -1 or 2 or 3, it's just not going to push it enough. I like to do mine in increments of 5 because in my experience when I've tried -1 or -2, I end up having to do it several times until I finally get up to -5, and I'm like, oh, it works. So I start with I usually go with 5s and 10s on that. I might go in and adjust it from there and go, okay, let's see if 4% works. If it does, I'll work with that. So, I might go, oh, let's see, -4. Will that work? Oops, I got to go from the right to left. 4, 4, and 4. So you could sit here and do this. Hit the preview. Yeah, it does change it a little bit. So I'm like, okay, 4 is good. You always want to go, but you don't want to go too extreme. Like -5 is not real extreme. If I try 3s on these, and you can mix these numbers up too. 3 is good too. It might just be a -1 that I needed. We'll try it. Oh, I always have to go from the right to the left once I have numbers in here. Will -1 work? Is -5 too much? Well, all I needed was -1 for that, after all. So that's a very good question, Sandra. Why -5? It's just my experience is when I do 1-point increments, I always waste my time. So I try 5-point increments, or 5% increments. All right. So Sepida, that was a very good question. How do you kill widows? Now, if I had orphan text, let's say this is orphan text right here. This is not a very good paragraph for this. Let me find something that will look like orphan text.
What is that orphan text?
Yeah, I'm trying to find, I want to find some, I'm going to create something that makes orphaned text, okay? Right now I don't really have orphaned, oh, well, no I don't. I'll create some orphan text. Orphaned text is excessively short ends of paragraphs that are on a completely different column or on a different page. For instance, we're reading this column about printing in Germany, and it ends out with preaching friars who brought the word of God to the, and then you come up here, urban working class, it's supposed to say, we're urban working class and poor. Well, that right there is an orphan. That's orphaned text. Excessively short bits of paragraphs that either skip across a column or more specifically across a page. And when I kill orphans, and that sounds horrible for me to say that. When I kill orphans, I do it daily. Poor things. What I do is I typically, instead of adjusting my word spacing and letter spacing, if I have something this long, I will just see if I can pull my boxes and make them just a little bit bigger to get that orphan text to get out of there. Okay, so that's okay if you have something like this where we want these two to line across their baselines. But if you have one line that ends a little short over here, that's okay. They call that clotheslining, where everything lines up at the tops, and just like clothes on a clothesline, you might have some clothing that's longer than others. So you can have this staggering at the bottom. That's okay. It's acceptable. That's more acceptable to have staggering at the bottom with a little extra space than it is to have orphaned text going across another column or across the page. Another example of orphan text would be, let me figure out where I'm at here. Let me break this here. Let's say I wanted to do this and have a layout that looks something along the lines of this. This is considered orphaned text, even though it goes with this printing in Germany, because it's in a different column, it's on the same page, so you think, oh, those go together pretty well. But if you look and you compare visually between this column of text and the next column of text on the right, this is excessively short. So we try not to have excessively short, meaning 3 lines, 2 lines, 1 line. So if I wanted to, I might decide to break that up. Excuse me, I think I just had something go on with my mouse here. I don't know where I'm at now. It's just really screwed up. Hold on just a minute. This mouse just is super tricky. Oh. Let me put that cursor back in here and get a paragraph or a column break. That was really weird, whatever happened there. Yeah, I think I'm on a totally different grid structure right now anyway. Okay, I'm on a totally different page, but we'll just make it happen. This is not considered orphaned text because you have enough of it that it feels like it was on purpose. You have a block of it. So I may have an image in here that wraps around. Okay, so that is not orphaned text because you have more than three lines, 3 or 4. Okay. So I kill orphans typically by changing their box, the size of the box that the type is in, and reflowing it into a slightly bigger box. Okay. So there's how you kill widows and orphans. You guys can be orphan and widow ninja masters. Okay. Now our next thing that I was going to speak about was Textwrap. Okay, I need to have an image in here in the first place. Some of you guys already know how to place images in InDesign and some of you do not. So we're going to place some images in InDesign. First, I want to make sure I've downloaded the images from the project, and I did. Here they are, Gutenberg images. I have all sorts of them. So those were found on Blackboard in the assignment. It's a zip file. It says Gutenberg images. You can download that and save it to your flash drive, and then you double click on it, it'll open it and expand it. Okay, so I have these images. Now I'm not going to open the images and copy and paste them to InDesign. That's really bad habit. We don't do that in the real world. It's called embedding the graphics, and it's not how you're going to keep a job in the industry. We don't open Photoshop and copy and paste. We don't open Illustrator and copy and paste. What we do is we are in InDesign and we go to File and we place an image. Just like if we wanted text, we go from Word. We go to File and Place. We don't copy and paste from Word either. So there should be no copy and pasting from Word to InDesign. There should be no copy and pasting from Photoshop to InDesign. Now, sometimes you can copy and paste from Illustrator. Illustrator and InDesign are similar creatures. So I went to File and Place. I'm going to my Gutenberg images, and let's say I want an image of this press, the Gutenberg press, which is that black and white line art sort of image. And I hit Open. Now, opening in essence will give me what is called a loaded cursor. You see, I'm moving my mouse around, and I'm not clicking anywhere. That is a loaded cursor. That means the image is in there. I don't want to click necessarily on a type box because you don't want the image inside a type box. So make sure, sometimes I'll click out on the artboard and just put it out there. Like, oh my gosh, that is one whopper graphic. Holy cow, I'm hitting Command minus so I can zoom out. That is one big graphic. I'm going to move it over. Now I'm just grabbing the edge of the box to move it over. Now, I'm going to resize this thing because it's way too big. You don't want to make them any bigger than what they are. You can make them smaller, however. Does anybody know the keyboard shortcut that I'm going to hold down to resize this thing so it stays in proportion? It's the same for the letters. What was that?
Shift.
Shift, and here's Shift. Shift just crops it. Keeps the box in proportion, but it crops the image. Command. Shift and Command. And if I click and I wait and hold and then start dragging, I can see it in action. Okay, you can actually see it live. Okay, so I'm going to move this around. So Shift Command and then click, and if you want to wait a minute so that it'll do its thing, you can see it. I like that, so you can see it live. Like, okay, that's perfect right there. And then you move it. Now, one of the things I cannot stand about InDesign is this thing called a content grabber, and I don't have mine turned on right now, and it gives us nothing but problems as new InDesign users. So if you have a little circle and a target in this image, it's called a content grabber. When you go to click to move the image like so, it won't move the image. It'll move the image in the bounding box that it's in, and it'll crop the image. It'll do something like this, where the image is cropped, and you don't want that. So we're going to turn off content grabber assuming it's on. So if your content grabber is on, go to View and Extras, and you want to click on Hide Content Grabber. The content grabber looks like a little, when you float over, it looks almost like the center of a camera when you're looking through a lens. Let me zoom in on that so you can see it. Well, okay, it's not doing it when I'm zoomed in. There we go. That little guy right there is Content Grabber. And when he's present, he can give you a lot of problems. Because you're with the Move tool and you just want to move this graphic and the bounding box, and it crops it. Okay, that is frustrating. That's because of Content Grabber. So if you would like to turn Content Grabber off, it's View, again, Extras. Hide Content Grabber because, well, quite frankly, he's worth a lot less than what the InDesign manufacturers think he's worth, I think. So I'm going to deselect the graphic just to make sure I know that its content is not selected, and I'm going to move it to where it needs to be moved. Maybe I need to just move it down here. Now, right now I'm not really thinking about my design. I really don't have a sketch for this, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the space over here. It doesn't really look very well balanced, but for now I'm just talking about a text wrap that I would like maybe to have this text to wrap around this press object, this printing press, and right now the text is going right through it. So let's talk about how to do a text wrap in InDesign. These are really cool. They can give you problems, but I'll walk you through those as well. So I'm going to make sure nothing's selected right now. I'm going to grab my black arrow tool known as the selection tool, and I'm going to click one time on this graphic that I want to text wrap on. And in order to put a text wrap on a graphic, I would go to Window and Text Wrap. We use these a lot. That's why there's a keyboard shortcut for it. Command-Alt-W. I don't remember that. I always have to go to Window Text Wrap. It'd be a good idea to remember that. Now you'll get this box that comes up that says Text Wrap. Now here's where it looks like, you know, Greek to me and you. You're like, okay, I don't know what any of this means. Well, the first one, the first icons at the top of the text wrap, this one means no text wrap. The second one means wrap around the bounding box of the image, which is not what I want. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. The third one is wrap around the contour edges of the object, but right now it's not doing it. So I have to figure out why it's not doing it. But that's the one I want. It's got a circle inside of what looks like to be lines of type. Now the reason why it's not wrapping around the contour is I haven't told it to do so yet. So where it says wrap options and contour options right down here towards the middle bottom, on contour options in the type where it says same as clipping, that's a clipping path that you would set in Photoshop, which we don't have here, and you don't need one on a black and white graphic. You can tell it to detect the edges. So switch it from same as clipping to detect the edges, and it will detect the edges of that artwork. And it will automatically wrap around that artwork. And you're like, oh my gosh, shut the front door. Did it really do that? Yes, it did, just like that. Bam. And again, that was choosing the third icon from the left, which is wrap around object shape. And then on contour options, the type of option, you want to detect the edges. Now, we typically have one pica wrap. We don't want the text going right up to the graphic. So here in this field, which is the second row down, I'm going to set that to 1 pica. Just type in 1, it understands that you mean picas. Now you see the little contour edges moved out. These blue edges moved out a little bit. They moved out from the image 1 pica. That means that no text will touch anything past that blue line. That blue line is a non-printable line. It's not going to show up when it prints. I'm like, oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Now, the problem, I do have a problem with this. I have all sorts of reflowing going on. So I want to go ahead and maybe extend this box out that has this type in here, get this to reflow correctly. I can move this graphic if I'm like, oh man, he's really messing up. I can resize it a little bit and get things to wrap better. I can move him a little bit. So when you do text wraps, you're definitely going to have some problems pop up where text reflows. You just have to work out those problems. And there we go. I just text wrapped, that's a word. I just text wrapped text around that image. Now, I sometimes run into problems. I'm going to show you a problem. Let's say I want continuing legacy to come over a little bit, like so. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. Or maybe I want insight and innovation. I want to come down like so. Well, there are areas where you might want the text to ignore the text wrap, and this is something that's really difficult to remember, but I'm going to mention it anyway. This text wrap I set on this graphic, it will have any and all text, including a big headline. It will have any text around it want to run away from it and wrap around it. Like if I took this over to my headline, watch what happens when I take this image over to my headline. Oh, my graphics art headline just disappeared. Wait a minute, where'd it go? Well, it's because the text wrap on this is forcing that stuff to go away. It doesn't know where to wrap, so it just disappears. It's still there, the bounding box is there, but the text doesn't know where to go. So if there's a bounding box in there, let me show you. Here's the bounding box for this type, and I move this over. Bounding boxes are still there, but you can see the type is gone. It's because that image just squoze out all of that type. It's still in the boxes. That text is still there, but it's running away from that graphic because it's got a text wrap. Okay? So when you have a situation that happens like this, and you don't want the certain text to wrap around the image, for instance, let's pretend that this text right here, I do not want it to wrap around the image. You click on the text box that you want to ignore the wrap on that image for. So I clicked on the text box, and I go to Object, Text Frame Options, not easy to remember. Command B is the keyboard shortcut for, I don't know why, box. Text Frame Options. And way down here at the bottom, the most silent little thing right here where it says Ignore Text Wrap, it's real quiet. It's like, shh, don't tell anybody I'm down here. You click on this. I'm going to hit the preview first. You click on this, and that text will not wrap around the object, okay? So there are certain times when you have text boxes that you do not want the text to wrap around the object because it keeps moving the text and goofing it up and making it disappear. So in this case, I wanted to ignore the text wrap on that. Now, you don't really want things touching quite this tightly, but this was just for example. Okay, so we just talked about how to do a text wrap and how to tell certain text boxes to ignore the text wrap. Now, I will tell you that I know we played around a while back with type inside of shapes. Type that is set justified works super well when it's inside of shape because it aligns to both the left and the right. You might argue the point that type set justified, meaning flush left and flush right, type set justified does also flow a little bit more tightly to the edges of things when you're doing a text wrap. So if you're doing a text wrap and you really want your type to go pretty much right to the edge of that graphic or the edge of the padding of the graphic, you might justify that text. Now, if I justify this text, then it's probably safe to say I should justify most of the text in this layout, just to be consistent, unless I have a sidebar or something. Now, you'll notice when I justified that text, I have all sorts of reflow I've got to deal with. There we go. So there is a text wrap. Any questions about the text wrap? Any questions about what you see up here at all? All right, let's move on. Now, we did talk about drop caps. I just want to mention that again. This is a drop cap. Now, I suppose you could get really creative and you could go to the Google and you could ask the Google for an illustrated initial letter T. Oh, look at those. Those look all biblical and stuff. Well, we're talking about Gutenberg. He printed the first. He printed the first manually printed Bible. So I might go biblical on you guys with these illustrated initials. These are not called drop caps because there's no automatic feature in InDesign for this. This is called an illustrated initial. Now, when I'm searching for graphics and I'm going to use them for print, I did supply you this video last week in the announcements, but I didn't really cover it much in class. So these I don't know if I can use. I'm clicking on images. I have no idea if they're low resolution, high resolution, medium resolution, big, small. I have no idea. Floating over them and then telling me that it's 235 by 350 gives me no idea. I mean, okay, that's how many pixels by how many pixels, but that doesn't tell me how many pixels per inch it has and if it's sharp. So what I usually do when I'm looking for images on the internet for my school projects and I want to get high resolution ones, I will click on the search tools button out here on my Google search. And you'll see that the word size, color, type, and so on comes up. So I clicked on the search tool right here. So under size, I don't want just any old size. No, sir, I want them large. It weeds out, hopefully, a lot of those low resolution wannabes, and it gives me some detailed, pretty detailed illustrated initials. Now, I'm not real thrilled with anything I'm seeing. Oh, that one's nice. That one's nice there. I'm not thrilled with anything I'm seeing. I'd really like something a little bit more ornate, something more biblical. If you research Gutenberg's Bibles, there was quite a bit more illustration to that initial. But I don't need to be just like Gutenberg, I suppose. Oh, now that looks kind of cool. That looks kind of Gutenberg-ish. It's kind of artsy, too, because it's hand-drawn. All right, I'll try that one just for giggles. Now what I do is I clicked on it and I hit view image and it looks big. Yeah, when you click on it and it goes big like this, you're like, oh yeah, jackpot. Yeah, so I'm going to right click on it now. And I'm going to save the image as, and I'm just going to take it to my my project 5 folder. So I'm going to call it letter T illustrated initial. Or I could just say illustrated initial T. Save that. Now, is it ready to use in my layout? No, it's not. What I need to do, anytime I take a photo of something, scan something in, whatever, grab it from the internet. By the way, do I own this because I got it from the internet for free? No. This might be copyrighted, so I will not do this for paid projects. I will drag this down here to Photoshop, and I'm going to open it in Photoshop. By clicking and dragging it to Photoshop, it automatically opens Photoshop and hopefully opens the image at the same time. I could also right-click and go to Open with Photoshop. And what I'm going to do in Photoshop is I'm going to check the resolution on this. Now, in the assignment, it does say specific things about what we need to do with art. I'm going to go to our online learning, and I'm going to look to see what it says in regards to image, how to deal with images for this project. There's very specific things that are stated here. I'm going to go to just this week. I think I copied it to this week as well. Okay, so what it says here, it says you may also do additional visual research. Images must be properly prepared properly. Line art images, which are images that are black and white with no grays, need to be 1200 pixels per inch in bitmap color mode and saved as TIFF file format. Now that sounds like I'm a Martian talking to you in a foreign language right now. So this in essence is which kind of image? Color, grayscale, or black and white? Line art.
Do you know that the week 8 folder is open?
It's not. It should be. Okay, it's probably the whole entire. Oh, it's the big guy, week 8 through 16. All right. Sorry for the interruption, folks. We have to make that available. Thank you, Nikki. I appreciate that. All right. Okay, so what kind of graphic is this? Color, grayscale, or black and white with no grays and no colors? Which is line art. Yeah, this is a line art graphic. It's probably saved as grayscale. If I zoom in, there's probably a little bit of gray in there, but really I want this to be black and white line art, no grays. So this is open in Photoshop. And here is how we tell if an image is usable or not in our pieces. We don't assume that just because we searched large graphics and it looked large and I could zoom in and it looked pretty good, we don't assume it's good to use. We don't assume it's right to use yet or prepared properly. What we do is in the next step is we go to View, I'm sorry, I'm in Chrome here for a second. We go to Image, we're in Photoshop now, Image Size, and we want to make sure that the width and height is set in inches so we understand what's going on there. Right at the moment I had it in percentage. But this should say inches over here. Now, here's the problem. This resolution is 72 pixels per inch. What resolution did it say on Blackboard that we had to have black and white line art graphics at? 1200. That's a lot, isn't it? 1200. I'm not going to just type in 1200 here where it says 72. That does nothing for the quality of the image. What I will do, though, to understand how resolution affects size, everything scales in proportion, guys. If it doesn't, your stuff ends up looking pixelated. So in order to get this to scale in proportion, meaning when I tell it I want the resolution to be 1200, the width and height should change quite a bit. It'll become much smaller. So in order for that to happen and for me not to have to do the mathematics, I uncheck Resample, where it says Resample Automatic. I uncheck Resample. And you'll see the width, the height, and the resolution are all interconnected here. That means that whatever I do to one thing, proportionally it will affect the other. And yet this is what you do want. So in 72, where I highlight the 72 resolution number, I'm going to type 1200. And it tells me that the widest I can use this graphic is just a little over half an inch, about 3/4 of an inch, 0.71. And the tallest that I can use this image is just almost an inch tall. Okay, so that is as big as I can use this graphic, assuming I'm using it from Photoshop and not taking it to Illustrator and doing some sort of image tracing. So I hit OK, and then it said to save it as what file type? I'm going to go to Save As. Did it say CompuServe GIF? No, it did not say CompuServe GIF. What should we save line art black and white bitmap images in? TIFF. Let's save. Hit OK on this. Nothing we need to change here. But I really need to see if this is actually in black and white mode. Now I've saved it as a TIFF. I resized it. I am going to see, it says it's in index mode. Uh-oh. That's not correct. We do not use index mode in any printing at all. So how would I change the mode from index mode to just black and white bitmap mode? Anybody know how to do that?
I usually copy the picture and bring it.
Oh, no, we're just going to do this. We're going to go to image mode, and it's index color now. See? We go grayscale. It says, oh, do you want to discard the color? Yeah, because I don't have any color in there. Then I go back to image again and go to mode and I go to bitmap. Okay? So this is a dual process because it was index color, then I had to go to grayscale. You couldn't go to index to bitmap because bitmap was grayed out. So you have to go index color to grayscale, then grayscale to bitmap. Now here is a huge warning to you all. By default, when you go into Photoshop and you're saving something as bitmap, you have the method as diffusion dither, that's by default selected. You do not want that. I don't know why they set that as the default. Nobody uses it, or we use it very little. Instead of diffusion dither, you want to choose 50% threshold. what diffusion dither will do is it'll turn everything into tiny little, it's almost like little black snowflakes, little tiny dots. So 50% threshold will keep it nice and sharp, no little tiny dots everywhere. You hit OK, and you'll notice that the edges are a little bit kind of crunchy looking. Well, this is going to be a small graphic. It shouldn't be that bad. And we're going to save that one more time. Just save, because we already did a save as. So let's see if this is actually in line with what Blackboard says. Blackboard says line art images with no colors and no grays need to be 1200 pixels per inch, bitmap color mode, and saved in TIFF file mode, TIFF file format. So image mode, bitmap, yes. Image size, 1200, yes. Is it saved as a TIFF? Yes, it's got it right there at the end. All right, we're ready to use this in InDesign now. All right, I can close it. I don't need it anymore. Now when I go to InDesign, maybe I don't want that big T there anymore. So if I click and highlight that T and hit the delete key, the one, not the numbers key, but the delete, oh no, I got rid of the T and the H is still like big now. What happened there? Well, this is a drop cap and I need to tell it no drop cap. So before I'd set the drop cap to be 3 lines tall and 1 letter in. Now I need to make that 0. I don't want a drop cap. A drop cap is that little symbol right there. It looks like a big A with a paragraph around it. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. And I'm going to place this illustrated initial T. I'm going to just kind of place it out here near the pasteboard. What's going on out there in the pasteboard? I'm getting rid of that. So I go to File and Place, and I go get my T, which is in my Project 5 folder. And it's the illustrated initial .tiff. I hit Open, and I just place that over here so I can see it. There he is. He's big enough. He's more than big enough. Now, I can do a couple of different things here. I'm going to try 2 different things. One is I can place this T in its position, which clearly this is a problem because I can't read the rest of the text. What should I do to this T to make the text get away from it? Textwrap. So I go to get my Textwrap. If it's gone, go to Window and Textwrap. Okay. Now this kind of Textwrap, typically I will wrap around the bounding box, not the object. So let's try the bounding box. There it is. That works. I just clicked on the second icon, which wraps around the bounding box, the box the scan is in. And I can move this down so it'll kind of, I like it at the baseline of this other type. Uh-oh, it's running away. Oh no. I wanted that to come down so it baseline line up with the was, but now I've got the intervention moving out of the way. Ah, this is driving me nuts. I don't want that to happen. Let me go back to my Textwrap. Now, we've only talked about this first, we had a first box that we talked about whenever we were using the wrap around the object shape. But this is around the box. I wonder, at the bottom here, this is an indication that this is the bottom offset. I wonder if I can use a negative number. Oops, let me unlink the chain here because it was making everything go crazy. If I use a negative number, oh, yep, there we go. I can get that Textwrap to go in the minus so that invention wraps back underneath there. And I still have this drop cap T aligning beautifully with the baseline of the was. Might even bring it just a little below baseline. Ooh, this looks nice. It's a little big. I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller. To make it smaller, I hold down Shift and Command, and then I would start clicking and dragging. Shift and Command, click and drag, and get it to where it's a little less big. I'm trying to make a statement, but not like that much of a statement. Now, the advantage of a line art graphic over a RGB or grayscale or CMYK graphic, a color graphic or continuous tone graphic, a line art graphic you can color right here in InDesign to a point. If you grab the white arrow tool, which is known as the direct selection tool, and you click on the graphic, it tells me here that this graphics fill is black. Okay? The graphic itself is made of black, not the box that it's in. Now, I'm going to bring up the Swatches panel. I never use the color panel. I use the Swatches panel. And I can make that any color I want. I want it to be blue or pink or orange or purple or red. So you don't do this in Photoshop because, one, if I converted this to CMYK, it'll be 4 times, well, it won't be 4 times the size because it'll be 300 pixels per inch. But it'll be not as sharp. It'll be a larger file because you got 4 channels for cyan, magenta, yellow, black. It takes up more room, and you can't do it so quick. You know, here you just click on a button, it's whatever color you want. Now, if you want more than these colors, I need to share with you how to do that for sure. How many of you guys want more than this color range here? You guys want more than these colors that are in here? Yeah, let me show you how professionals do it. Have you guys heard of the Pantone matching system before? Some of you have, some of you haven't. And I really should bring the books in. The Pantone matching system is a system of color that we basically is trying to standardize color. You know, if somebody tells you red, then they want to know, well, what color of red? Because there's a million colors of red. And the Pantone matching system has different colors of red, and they have a number assigned to them. So here in the Swatches panel, there's a little flyout menu in the upper right corner. And if I click on that, I can go to the topmost item, which is New Color Swatch. Now, mind you, I still have my T selected, so whatever color I select here, it will affect this T. If you don't want it to affect an object, don't have it selected. You can still do this without having objects selected. Now, here where it says CMYK color mode, we still want CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, but we want the Pantone Process CMYK color mode. So if I scroll down, I can find Pantone, or Pantone Plus is what they're calling it now. Pantone Plus CMYK coded or Pantone Plus CMYK uncoded. Now, the coded or uncoded really doesn't make any difference which you choose, at least for class, but out in the real world, this is in reference to the kind of paper you're printing on. Paper is either coded, which reflects color much better, makes your colors look brighter, or it's uncoded, which makes your colors look a little bit more dull. Either way, though, it's the same amount of ink in either book. So I'm going to assume in this lab I'm going to print on uncoded paper. So I'm going to choose Pantone CMYK uncoded. There's this thing on it called dot gain on the press. When wet ink hits paper, even though it's tacky ink, it still spreads a little bit. And on uncoated paper, it spreads. So there is some compensation on press for this. Now, here in this area where you see these few colors, you can click on the little scroll item and you can drag and you can see all of the colors that the Pantone Plus matching system has for you to choose. So I could choose, maybe I want something more royal, maybe a purpley blue. So I'm going to go try to quickly grab my purpley blue. So I'm dragging up towards blue, and between blue and magenta, I want something kind of royal blue, not too purple. And it's hard to tell on the monitor what color I'm getting, so this is why we have a printed Pantone book. But let's say Pantone 98-8 is the color I want, which is made up of 84% cyan, 100% magenta, no black, or no yellow, and 50% black. So I click on that and I hit Add, and it adds it to my Color Swatch panel. Awesome. And since I had my T selected, it also changed that color there. Now I could go in here and I could find other colors as well. I was like, oh, some of you guys want some sort of antiquated looking old paper sort of effect. Well, that's going to be near the beginning. Yeah, it starts with the yellows and tans in the beginning. So I'm going to try to find some sort of, tannish sort of color. I used to have these memorized, like what color was what. Kind of weird, but it's once you're working a system so long, you get it. But they've changed all the numbering system. Made everybody mad. So I'm going to grab this kind of tannish color, kind of a tannish yellow paper, old oxidized paper. I'm going to add it to, oops, it changed my T. That's okay. I'm going to hit done. And now I have two colors here that were not there before. I have Pantone 98-8 and 13-6. So that's how we deal with colors, is we don't use what the computer has in there as default, because the computer usually will not make the best choices for us, and we use something we want. Okay, let's say I do want something that looks kind of akin to a sort of paper behind this. Now this color may not be the best, I don't know till I try it. I'm going to get my rectangle tool, and I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going just outside the cut line too, out into the gray. I'm drawing a rectangle shape, and I'm filling it with that color. You're like, oh my gosh, where'd all my graphics go? Well, they're behind there. You can go to Object, Arrange, and Send to Back. You can also right-click and do that too. So if you have something selected, you can right-click and go to Arrange, Send to Back. This is something we use a lot. And don't do send backward. It only send it back one level. So send backward will only send it back behind the most recent object you placed, such as that T. So this would be Object, Arrange, Send to Back, all the way back. Boy, that changed this a lot, didn't it? For the better, I don't know. I might adjust its tint. Right now I think it's a little dark. So I have that color selected. I have this box selected. And this tint says 100%. I may bring that back a little bit. Ah, that's better. So it feels like aged paper a little bit because it's off-white. Maybe I want it to feel aged. Now, if you wanted it to feel oxidized, how many of you guys have opened a book and you're like, oh wow, the edges of the paper are kind of brown and it gets lighter as it goes in? That's called oxidation. Now, I would imagine that Gutenberg's Bibles were probably oxidized. Now what I might do here, I've got to think this through here, I might go ahead and reduce, I'm going to take this and reduce the size of it. I'm going to bring him down just a little bit. I'm going to draw a separate box, and I'm going to fill it with the Pantone color 100%, send him to the back. Then I'm going to bring this box back up, see if I can click on him. I'm not going to make him the full size of the layout. I'm going to fake an oxidation. So I don't have to go into Photoshop and spend all my days and time and figuring out resolutions and all that. There's a lot of things you can do in InDesign where you don't have to go jumping to Photoshop or Illustrator. Why do it if it's going to just waste your time? Just do it here. So I have a light colored paper tone inside of a darker colored paper tone. Now oxidation in essence is a fading of darker to lighter. So I'm going to take this box and I'm going to feather the edge so that it gives the impression that it's fading. So I can actually feather the edge here in InDesign by clicking on this box and going to Object and go to Effects. There's all sorts of effects here. And I'm going to go to Feather, Basic Feather actually is what it's called, Basic Feather. Let me move this over so we can see it. I'm going to hit the Preview button. That really doesn't do much for me. It's very barely feathering. But if I change the feather width, you can see how it gets softer and softer and softer the wider I make that feather width. This gives the appearance of an oxidized sheet of paper without me having to go into Photoshop and having to go through all the trouble. I just did it right here in InDesign. Now the cool thing about this too is I don't have to guess, like in Photoshop I'm guessing, oh well, how far do my edges go in and all that. Here I'm like, my edges are going in too far, let me stretch this out a little bit until it looks good, until it looks right. I don't have to jump back and forth from Photoshop for this. I don't have the time for that. My life is too precious, as is yours. So I'm like, okay, that looks better, looks a little bit more natural. I did that all in InDesign. Nothing in Photoshop. I love Photoshop, don't get me wrong. But why jump from InDesign to Photoshop and spend all that time making some 16-inch by 8-inch graphic that's a big honking CMYK thing and trying to guess where this gradient's going to fit best? Why do that to yourself? I'm not prepared to spend that kind of time. I'm prepared to work smarter, not harder. Okay, so simple things like gradients and that kind of thing and feathering, it can happen right here. I haven't saved this in a while, so I should hit Command S and save it. And I think at this point I'd like to stop the video, maybe take a break. We'll do another video because that's a lot of information I've covered that I didn't even tell you I was going to cover. So we covered a text wrap, we covered a drop cap, we covered finding a graphic high enough resolution on the internet, we covered how to turn this graphic into a line art 1200 pixels per inch item, we figured out how to color it, we went to swatches and we figured out how professionals pick their colors by using Pantone, not CMYK regular, just Pantone plus CMYK coded or uncoded. We applied color and we put a background in there without having to go to Photoshop to do it. So we'll save that and we'll take a break. Any questions?